just when you thought it was safe to go onto iTunes. This is Next Level Guy, the only website that makes self-development as fun as going to the movies. It's time to take the red pill and escape the Matrix.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Next Level Guy Show podcast with your host, Ian Dawson-Mackay. Today's guest is Chad Wesley Smith. He's the owner of Juggernaut Training Systems, a top 20 ranked raw powerlifter of all time, an author, a speaker, and a world-class coach. As his About page outlines, Chad is one of the most accomplished strength athletes of recent years. He has a background in track and field and took 2 collegiate national championships and continued his success in powerlifting and strongman to this day. In powerlifting, he currently owns PRs of a 435 kg squat with wraps, 380 kg squat and sleeves, a 257.5 kg bench press, and a 367.5 kg deadlift as well. He also is top 10 totals of all time with wraps and without at 1,050 kg or 2,314 pounds, and 1,010 kg, which is 2,226 pounds respectively. He earned his professional status in strongman by a landslide victory at the 2012 North American Strongman Championships. As a coach, Smith has helped over 50 athletes earn Division I athletic scholarships and worked with athletes in the NFL, UFC, MLB, and Olympics, as well as having numerous world-class powerlifters and breaking many records himself. So I thought, who better to discuss how to become a juggernaut in our own lives with? In this interview, we discuss masculinity, weightlifting, skill development, jiu-jitsu, and how to become a man everyone wants to have a pint with and lift heavy weights. But before we get into that, a quick word about our affiliates. I've managed to build up some great relationships with some awesome companies. This allows me to obtain special discount codes, deals, and listener exclusives. Please go to www.nextlevelguy.com/affiliates for further information. I am particularly loving the delicious protein from the Protein Works, which I use after my jiu-jitsu training to recover and come back stronger. My steaks, sausages and burgers, which I got from Muscle Foods, which are tasting amazing just now on the summer barbecues in the sun, and buying some awesome gifts for loved ones at the Cool Materials for many upcoming birthdays and weddings, etc. There really is something for everyone there. For more info on these and so much more, check out www.nextlevelguy.com/affiliates. I hope you had as much fun listening to this one as I did interviewing Chad. So if we met in a bar or a protein kiosk or whatever, and somebody asked who you were and why you were well known, what would you say?
I guess well known for lifting heavy stuff and talking about how to lift heavy stuff on the internet mostly. So I'm the owner of Juggernaut Training Systems, which in a little niche community is pretty well known, I suppose. Powerlifting, weightlifting, but I really see myself and our company as educators at this point and trying to help people better reach their goals.
Well, you're mega famous on YouTube and the internet across the powerlifting world for lifting amazing weights. I think I seen a video recently. Was it 500 pounds for 22 reps? And you made it look easy. So, but where did this come from? Was there an inspiration when you were younger to start lifting weights? Was there a turning point in your life that made you want to start lifting iron?
I was just really always interested in training. I think even as a little kid, I think strength was something that was very fascinating to me, and that was probably coming a lot from like Arnold Schwarzenegger movies and Rocky movies, stuff like that. I had two older brothers, quite a bit older than I am. So when I was 5-6 years old, my oldest brother was playing high school football, and him and his friends talking about how much they could bench press, and I remember that they could do make the little peck dance, kind of that peck pop. sort of move. And I remember thinking like, oh my God, my brother is like the biggest, strongest guy ever. And yeah, he was probably like 5'11", 175 pounds, like 80 kilos. And I guess you guys are in England, right? Should I use pounds or kilos?
You can use pounds or kilos.
Okay. All right. And so, and they had shown me like Terminator and Commando and Rocky IV and Bloodsport and all these movies.
Mm.
So I was just always really interested in being strong and training, even to where the first time I was going to play American football, I think I was about 10 years old. And my mom said that I was getting ready for like the tryout for the team. And I was using the bungee cords, like the kind of bungee cords you use to secure something in the back of a truck. And I had collected as many of those as I could find around our house and our garage, and sort of bungee corded myself to a tree in the backyard so I could do, resisted sprints with that. And this is just like kind of stuff coming from my own imagination and watching, Rocky IV training montage, because I was, like I said, nine or 10 years old. So it was something that just always fascinated me. And I knew when I got to high school and I was playing football and doing track, and I always played sports growing up. I think starting with soccer and swimming when I was 5 years old. I knew that to get better, I had to lift weights, and being strong was important. So I just really went after that with a passion, and would train, 5, 6, 7 days a week when I was in high school for 2 or 3 hours, and probably overtrained quite a few times. But a teenage boy is pretty resilient, so was able to just kind of grow. And my freshman year of high school, I was 5'8" and weighed 175 pounds, so like 80 kilos.
Mm.
And my senior year, I was about 6 feet tall and weighed 275 pounds, so 125 kilos. And there was a lot of work and a lot of calories in between there.
I mean, was that how you defined, like, one of the things I looked at back when I was younger was like masculine films like yourself, like the Rocky, Rambo and things like that. Would you have defined, masculinity back then as being strong, the big guys, the muscles? I mean, is that the way you look at masculinity now? Do you think it's changed over the, with feminism and things like that coming in?
Oh yeah, actually one of my favorite books is called Season of Life by a guy named Jeffrey Marks, and it touches on this exact concept, and how kids maybe up to 16, 17, 18 years old, what's kind of going to define the masculinity for that age group is who's the best at sports. So this physicality is all going to be tied into that. And then the next, sort of phase of life from maybe 18, 19 years old into late 20s, early mid 30s, depending on the person, it's going to be, how many women can you sleep with? That's going to define masculinity and your success with women in that regard. And then beyond that, 30 plus, 35 plus, whatever, how much money do they make? And that's such a simple and incorrect, I think, incomplete definition of masculinity. And I'm sure, growing up as a little kid, that's what I saw. I was like, oh, Arnold Schwarzenegger, like that was the ultimate, and like, men want to be him, women want to be with him kind of idea. But yeah, at this point in my life, and what they talk about in the book Season of Life, which fantastic book, is defining masculinity by like the quality of relationships that people have, and integrity and thoughtfulness and all of those, obviously much more important qualities than how much weight someone can lift.
I mean, is that where you see a lot of guys going wrong? Is it just where we want to have the disco muscles, we don't want to, if we stay on that superficial level, we don't actually get down and be deep and emotional?
Oh yeah, I mean, I certainly think that that's in male culture fairly, epidemic, because it's easy to have that superficial, surface relationships with people, and you got your buddies that you go out to the bars and chase women with, or that you go play golf with and drink beers and talk about business or whatever. But to I think it's pretty surprising how few adult men into their 30s and 40s and stuff, I think really have truly close friendships with people that they can share more meaningful aspects of their life with, and even to say, like, like, to ask like a 40-year-old man, like, who's your best friend. And I think a lot of them don't have a real answer for that. And those relationships, beyond significant other, parents, kids, all that kind of stuff, is going to be the most impactful part of someone's life.
I mean, that was something I was going to touch on later on, is that, yourself and Max Aitea both have, like, what seems like such a deep friendship. When I was researching you, that I couldn't find anything bad about you. There was a lot of love from people in the comments, and you were a fan favourite for a lot of people who watched and were into powerlifting. So why do you think that is? What makes a good friendship? Why do you think that you've been so popular compared to other lifters of your generation?
In terms of what makes a good friendship, I'll address that part of things first. And beyond the shared interests and similar sense of humors and all that kind of stuff. And Max is definitely one of my best friends, even though we've actually only known each other for maybe probably 5 years, but it was only like the last 2 years where we really got to hang out a lot more and spend more time together. Before, it was just kind of like I'd see him at a powerlifting meet here and there. But I think it's shared ambitions, not even that it's ambition towards the same goals, which obviously Max and my goals are very, very aligned in the work that we do together. But my best friend is a guy named Paul. We've been buddies for 14 years, and we're on the track team together in college. And he's a lawyer and doing all that stuff and very ambitious towards that goal, and I'm very ambitious towards my goals in lifting and fitness industry and all that stuff. So I think that goes a really long way. And then the ability to be open and vulnerable and share the good and bad parts of life with someone. So I think that's a big part of it in terms of why I've been able to be popular. I guess I suppose I am pretty popular. I don't think about that kind of thing a lot. It's probably just come from one, being good at lifting. I think that helps you be popular in powerlifting, and then sharing the information that we do at Juggernaut. Whenever you're helping people out, that's going to be something that they like. And then just not taking myself and training and life too seriously, and being able to put it's something I actually resisted for a long time, was putting much of my personality into the content that we provide. And there's other people who I think did more human interest and motivational, inspirational type of stuff, and kind of let people in more with that. And I was always resistant to that, because in some ways, and in some ways it still is a bit odd to me to think, that these people I don't know on the internet feel like they know me or have some more personal connection with my life and my story and stuff. But it's been more in the last 2 years, I think, as we do the podcast, the Jug Life podcast, and more stuff on YouTube, that we can put a little bit more of the personality and sense of humor and all that kind of stuff.
No, I mean, it's something I really liked when I started finding your content was, you're very warm, you're humble, that you give out all the secrets. You go into deep kind of explanations about things. You're not one of those people who you see them just putting up their videos. You actually go into little tricks and the hacks that can make people better. You want to help powerlifters and other, gym people. You're not one of those people who's out for themselves. And I think a lot of people warm to that because you really put so much sort of detail and you're very intellectual about how you do things. So it really comes across in your videos. So where do you see guys going wrong in the gym? Is there particular things that, like, pet hates you have when you see training videos on Instagram and that sort of thing?
Yeah, thank you for the compliment there. But yeah, I mean, there's certainly lots of places that people are going wrong. If I had to, pick one out for this purpose, I'd probably say it's trying to find, an easy or a quick solution to things rather than being willing to dive a little bit deeper into their understanding of a concept, and with that, dive deeper into the mastery of the concept, and in doing that, they're going to be able to, I think, find a lot more enjoyment in the process of trying to achieve whatever goal they have, rather than just, well, I haven't met my goal yet, I haven't produced the result I want yet, which, a lot of the goals worth attaining, are not, happening in 12 weeks or in 30 days, or things that magazine covers and stuff may lead people to believe, but they're, months and years and decades of pursuit and the ability to dive in deeper and chase mastery of that and love the process of it, I think is going to be something a lot more successful for people.
So, for people who are maybe going to the gym or wanting to get back into it, and they've just lifted a few weights, but they've never really got deep or moving towards intermediate or expert level. How should we start, really getting ingrained into the concept and developing, the techniques? I mean, how do you do it? Do you look on form and record your video, or is it more feel as you go through the movement? How can we analyze our sessions and start looking for the little things to start improving?
Yeah, I started lifting weights in 2000. I was 14 years old, a freshman in high school. And yeah, the internet existed at that point, but the information about how to train was much more scarce, and YouTube didn't exist, and things like that. So I had to, and certainly, people who have been training a lot longer than me had to either figure these things out by, talking to people, by watching the people stronger than them at the gym, and by experimenting and trial and error. And I think that that's hugely valuable and a bit of a lost art, because there is so much information prevalent and it is so much more easily accessible. And I'm one of the people putting that information out. So can YouTube videos be a great starting point, for people to begin to understand technique? Definitely. Can they, record their own videos and reflect back on those and compare to what they'd learned in an article or video? Certainly that's going to be a good idea. But I think the most important stuff to do is going to be to just be thoughtful in what they're doing, to not expect to master a technique in a day or a week or anything, but to just to go in each day with one thing to focus on. Keep a training log, whether that's written in a notebook or on your phone or on your computer or whatever, to where you can reflect on small details and keep some notes from the day. Like I started training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu about I guess 9 months ago, in August 2017, and it's something that's been totally new to me. And you know, I go to our regular kind of group classes, and once a week do a private training with one of the coaches. And there's been a couple things that have really helped me in the technique, the technical learning from that. And the two that jump out to me is that every session, you know, whatever techniques my coach Brent teaches me, you know, he talks me through them and shows them to me, and then we drill them, and then at the end of the session, he'll have me walk through the technique and say, you know, walk and talk through the technique. So I say, all right, you know, first I'm going to control the collar with my right hand, and then control the sleeve with my left hand, and so on and so forth. And I actually have to say what I'm doing all along the way, and then, you know, he can kind of correct the things I'm doing there. And then at the end of that, I go into the notes on my phone and write down each of the steps. So I'm getting, you know, I'm hearing the technique, I'm watching him do it, then I'm practicing it myself, and then I'm talking my way through it while I practice it again, and then I'm finally, you know, writing it down. And that's something that'd be pretty simple to apply for lifting techniques as well, as they can, you know, do all of those steps. They can hear it and see it on a YouTube video. They can practice it themselves and take video of it. Then they can do all that stuff. Yeah, you know, they can watch it and do it on a YouTube video. They can or watch it and hear it and see it on a YouTube video. They can practice it themselves and film that. They can, you know, write down or verbalize the technique. And I think people will be really surprised trying to talk through, you know, step by step of the squat, or, you know, squat, bench, deadlift, snatch, clean and jerk, whatever, that there's going to be parts where they can't explain it. And if they can't explain that part, do they really know what they're doing at that phase? And then to write it down, which is, I think, is going to help further commit it to memory. So that, you know, that would be my answer there.
I mean, that's something that I've started as well recently, is jiu-jitsu as well, and it's what a difference it is to the strength training, but you do see a lot of parallels. So for me, for example, I found I had tight hips I did a lot of squats, a lot of deadlifts. So did you find that by doing your strength training and, you know, the jiu-jitsu, that the flexibility and mobility improved? You know, can these kind of things be put together where one benefits the other?
I mean, yeah, yes and no. You know, my flexibility has certainly improved with jiu-jitsu. You know, I'm not going to tell someone like, oh, you can be the best powerlifter and the best, you know, jiu-jitsu athlete simultaneously. It's just, you know, it's not gonna work like that. Does lifting and being stronger help you in jiu-jitsu? Certainly. And that was my introduction to that kind of jiu-jitsu community about 9 years ago. I started, when I had first opened Juggernaut, one of my first clients was an athlete named Fabio Vilela. He's Gigante Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, is a Gracie Barra athlete, about 6'7", 250-pound black belt. Had moved from Brazil about 2 years prior to me meeting him, and was running a school here in Southern California. And through Fabio, I got to meet and train, you know, dozens of other black belts and world champions, guys like Hamalu Bahal, Victor Estima, who's over there in England. He would come here for like a pre-worlds training camp. So, you know, those guys were lifting hard to improve for jiu-jitsu. Now, they weren't doing powerlifting. I was not training them like powerlifters, but definitely the lifting is going to be very helpful. You know, coming in with a big powerlifting background, like, my strength is my biggest strength in jiu-jitsu, but in some ways it can be a hindrance as well, because, you know, I tend to maybe rely on the strength rather than, you know, learning the techniques and letting the technique do the work, and then applying the strength when it's, you know, once I've so a lot of times I try and train like I weigh 200 pounds instead of, you know, 300 pounds. and then when it comes time to really turn it on, all right, now I can combine my strength with better technique. But the flexibility part's been tough for me too, and just trying to get in some of those positions, and then my quads and my stomach are running into each other, and my legs are just so big that it's really hard to get in some of the positions.
I know that feeling. It's when you see it by your professor and it looks so easy, and then you try to flip your hip up and you hear cracks, or you think, that's not. Yeah, because it's a struggle, because like lifting weights, there's times when the technique goes, but you rely on the power. And you have to slowly build yourself out of that, because in jiu-jitsu, it's technique over power. And if you're using too much, if you have to use power, then, you're you haven't got it right. And I think that's the same with like the weightlifting, that if you're really having to power through a rep, sometimes it's maybe that you've got the technique off. I mean, obviously you have to grind a rep at times, but have you found anything in jiu-jitsu, like training or weightlifting, for example? Is it like maybe a ritual in your deadlift or something? Is there anything that's really helped you in like throughout it all, or is it very specific each time? Is it maybe the way you stand when you squat or bench press or anything like that?
I think to the effect of what you're saying would be more just finding a routine and a process for powerlifting, powerlifting and weightlifting, sports that are very replicatable. You can approach, you have the ability to approach the bar in the exact same manner every time, to, the way that you grab the grab the bar with your hands, to begin setting up your squat, then set your upper back position and duck under. Every single one of those things can be and really should be done as identically as possible every time. And it's like you watch an NBA basketball player get ready to shoot free throws, and they have that exact same routine every time. Whether they dribble twice and spin the ball in their hand and whatever it is, they're not going up there and changing it every single time. So that routine and rote, really approach to doing the stuff is going to be really useful. I think to just put people in the right frame of mind to do it, and to begin creating that precision you need in the technique.
And have you found the jiu-jitsu training, has that had a knock-on effect to your lifting? Do you find you maybe, do you not panic during a heavy lift as much, or anything like that?
Yeah, I've been lifting weights a lot longer than I've been doing jiu-jitsu, so it's been a while since I panicked during a lift. But when someone gets the side control on me, I'm certainly more panicked doing that. But something that that I have taken away from jiu-jitsu and been able to talk to the lifters that I coach about a lot is to go back to the idea of process orientation, which I mentioned before. Is let's say in jiu-jitsu someone is in side control on you. It's very easy, particularly as a white belt, a 3-stripe white belt, and it's very easy to panic in that moment and just think, I have to escape. I have to get out of this. Rather than, and that is almost impossible to achieve, because you're trying to go from, point A to point Z with none of the steps in between.
Yeah.
But if you can focus on the process of escaping, that you need to get your frames in, and you need to create space, get your hip away, and then be able to get your knee across, and so on and so forth, then you can actually achieve the goal by, step by step to do it. And, the same thing if someone wants to squat more or snatch more, clean and jerk more, or whatever, that just the idea of all right, I got to squat more is a very abstract, difficult to achieve idea. But if you can break things down into these parts and components and be able to achieve them systematically, I think it's much easier to achieve these 4, 5, 6 smaller goals in sequence, rather than trying to do the one big one, which is really the result of a good process.
So would that be your advice to like myself who wants to get back into the gym, or somebody who just wants to start lifting or get back to it, is to pick goals for each workout and just use it as a supplementary thing? Should they like say should it be 2 times a week, 3 times a week? Does it depend on the person? How would you advise somebody listening to start lifting?
Yeah, I mean, as far as the training frequency and how many times a week they're going to do that, I could give a lot of right answers for that because, but it's more going to be determined by lifestyle and schedule and what they have available to them. So I would probably say, like, if you can go and train 6 days a week, that's going to be generally better than doing it 3 times a week, particularly as a beginner, because you're going to get more frequent exposure, which allows for faster motor learning. But it's also probably not realistic. And in a lot of ways not necessary. So what I would suggest them to do is to seek out a good resource to begin understanding and learning proper technique. If they have access to that in person, whether it be an in-person coach or being able to attend a seminar, something like that, that's probably superior to even very, very good information off of YouTube or Instagram, anything like that. So if they can begin doing that, and then they need to be able to set themselves up for success. So with more beginner lifters, they might see someone who's inspirational to them on Instagram, and they're doing high bar ass to grass Olympic squats with 500 pounds or whatever it is, but they and then they themselves go into the gym and are like, all right, I want to squat with that same technique, but they don't have maybe the movement quality to and the strength and stability to make that happen yet, and then they're just going to be kind of banging their head against the wall trying to do something that they're not yet able to do. Where if they can take a step back and use like a movement regression, so maybe front squatting instead of back squatting, or goblet squats instead of front squats. Or even different like front foot elevated split squatting, just a simpler movement, whatever it is that they can do well at the time, do the one that you can do well and do it a bunch until you can do the next progression well, because doing a bunch of shitty looking squats is never going to add up to doing good looking squats. You got to do the exercises well and then progress to the more and more advanced variations.
So how do you think we can get that through to guys? How do we get them to leave the ego at the door and actually build themselves up, get the technique, build in the motor patterns, and just, stop this half-ass squats, the not locking out reps, and how can we actually get guys to learn these patterns and actually properly lift and not cheat themselves?
Oh man, that's a tough question. I would have to be some sort of master psychologist, I think, to understand the intricacies of the human ego and the male ego there. So I don't know if I can really venture a good answer at that. If people want to, if they want to do it right, there's plenty of information available to help them understand how to do it right. If someone doesn't have the desire to do things the right way, or to admit that they're not doing it, that they're currently not doing it the right way, it's going to be really, basically impossible to change that.
So how did you start building? Because you lift some incredible weights and you lift them for such heavy reps. How have you built that mental toughness? Because just watching you pull like 200 kilograms onto your back looked crazy, but the fact that you just kept repping and repping that weight, what goes through your mind during that time? Are you feeling your body, where my feet are placed, where my hands are placed, or are you just thinking something in your head? Do you have a ritual that you think about while you're going through it? How are you connected? Are you aware to your body, or do you go off in your mind somewhere and just keep doing the motion because you've repped it so many times?
Yeah, I think that it's more the latter that you said there. It's mental toughness is an interesting thing. and it's really, I think, just preparation for a situation. And you look at, people who would be regarded as very mentally tough, like Navy SEAL and Special Forces, military type of things, and they go through all this very grueling training, more than anything to prepare them to act without thinking, so that whatever situation they face is not overwhelming to them. And I think that, lifting weights is obviously nowhere near the demand of, people trying to shoot at you. But, once you've done it, I've done it so many times, and approached it with great attention to detail, day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, that doing doing the competitions and doing like an exhibition like that 500 for 22 doesn't become some mentally stressful exercise. It becomes more of, the fun time where you get to express the hard work of training. And I think a lot of people make a mistake in going into competition, and a powerlifting competition, and thinking that they have to do something unique or different in competition than what they've done in training for the weeks leading up to that competition. Because if the training was properly organized, you're ready. You're ready to express all of the hard work and training that you've done, and that ready from both a physical and mental standpoint.
So is that where your motivation keeps coming from? Because, you've broken numerous records, you've won competitions, you've been lifting for years. So, where does your motivation to keep going? Is it the fun element of it, or are you looking to push yourself to see what you're capable of? Or do you enjoy the coaching of new lifters? Is there something that you find changes as you go, or is the same motivation there from day one?
Yeah, I haven't done a powerlifting meet in about a year and a half now, so I'd have to say that probably some of that motivation was very waning for me. But I think, what was the most interesting to me is just that pursuit of, excellence and perfection in it, and how can you keep manipulating the training plan and these very small adjustments to everything to get that extra 0.5% that becomes so hard to come by when you reach such an elite level, as well as like head-to-head competition. But yeah, there's an enjoyment of the process for sure, even though, powerlifting and weightlifting and, previous to powerlifting, I did track and field and through the shot put. They're all sports in which the ratio of how much time spent preparing to how much time spent competing is, massive discrepancy. That in powerlifting, you're preparing, maybe training 4, 5, 6 times a week for, a 3-month training cycle. Let's say, 2 or 3 hours in each session to go up and do nine lifts. So maybe, 60 seconds of work. You're doing hours and hours and hours to prepare to showcase that in 60 seconds. So if you can't find an enjoyment of the preparation process, I think it's really difficult to sustain that. But yeah, I think just a joy of and hunger for competition. I started playing competitive sports when I was 5 years old, and I've always been competing in something. Minus maybe about a year and a half in the middle of college, I wasn't competing in anything, and then for about 3 or 4 months in kind of the middle of my powerlifting career, I guess I had a temporary retirement period, and I found motivation very difficult to come by, I realized in those phases of my life. So trying to beat your own numbers, trying to beat the other people from, for me, the other people who are trying to be the best in the world.
So do you think that's always been the motivation? Because when I was sort of analysing, like your history and that sort of thing, I noticed that you tended to always go for sports, that were individual. So there was like the shot put, there was the lifting, and then there's jiu-jitsu. Is it you like that individual aspect of it, and you have the team that you work with, but it's your individual targets? Or have you always, focused on individual assessment sports rather than team sports?
I played football in high school as well as doing track and field, and I think I really enjoyed playing football and had some opportunities to continue doing that in college. But I think I was disillusioned in some ways with that because I didn't see equal effort to improve being put forth by my teammates. And when I was throwing the shot put, as hard as I worked, that's how much I was going to improve, and it was all my successes and failures were going to be on me. So yeah, I think that's probably part of it. And then just as you get older too, I think there's less and less serious options for team sports. Outside of like a professional setting. So yeah, that's sort of the deal now. But it is powerlifting. Largely, I trained by myself. Had some training partners here and there, kind of come and go, but for the most part, that was a pretty Spartan, solo existence for me. And jiu-jitsu, I enjoy that because it is individual sport, but you have the training partners and the community of that are a big part to success as well.
I mean, did you find that with jiu-jitsu, for example, it felt like you were tapping into some sort of masculine energy, whereas with, you get the aggression, the testosterone out with the lifts, but there's something about the actual combat element, the physicality, it's very rugged and very emotive. How did you find the change between lifting the weights and competing and fighting and try to choke people out?
Yeah, I mean, wrestling and combat and all that is about as primal and basic as it gets in that sense. I mean, it's never something that I really, I guess, think about that much as we're going, but I just remember growing up and trying to wrestle my brothers and wrestle my dad, and me and my friends would wrestle all the time, and it is kind of the ultimate of being able to just impose your will and conquer someone else, make them do what you want them to. But yeah, it's jiu-jitsu. I think, some people will say that it's a fight. I don't really look at it like that. I think of it as just the sport jiu-jitsu, and trying to out strategy, better strategy and a better application of the technique.
You're in an industry where you're the product, and you've built a very successful brand. Juggernaut is massively well known, and you're really well liked. How have you made it into a brand? How have you taken something that some people would do as a hobby, to let steam off at the gym? Did you ever think when you were lifting that you could build a business from this? Can you describe the moment that you kind of knew you could turn this in and start drawing people in and making money from it?
Well, I started Juggernaut straight out of college. So I've actually only ever had 4 jobs in my life. I worked delivering newspapers when I was a little kid, 12 years old or something. I worked at a restaurant when I was in high school. The latter half of college, I worked coaching high school football and track, as well as running their off-season lifting program. And then straight out of college, I opened Juggernaut. So, it's kind of, and I always say I'm only going to have 4 jobs. This will be the last job that I do. I'll do it for the rest of my life. And we started in a much different place. It was all, in-person training and sport performance training. And then, just as sort of internet fitness grew a little bit, I saw, okay, I should probably, I have these thoughts about the way that people should train, so I'll share those, and started writing articles for Elite FTS, and I think wrote 30 some articles for them. Wrote the first Juggernaut Method book, and when I first did the first Juggernaut Method, the ebook, 531 was out there, but that wasn't really a big thing yet. Was writing ebooks, and everyone, tons of people have that now, and everyone's got a podcast and all this stuff. But back in 2010, I was a bit more on the forefront of that. I was only 24 years old, and just saw from the response to that book, I was like, oh, there's thousands of people who are interested in learning about this. I'm never going to be able to reach more than 100 or 150 here at my physical gym location on a monthly basis. So I need to start doing more of this work online and creating content and everything. And that was mostly articles from about 2010 till 2014, 2015, and then kind of late 2015 started doing the YouTube stuff a bit more. Early 2016 became much more consistent doing the podcast, and now we every week have three YouTube videos, 2 podcasts, and just trying to reach people through as many different avenues as possible.
And I mean, do you have such a thing as a normal day? How do you juggle family life, making products, running the gym, lifting for yourself, all, and doing these videos? And I mean, you put so much energy and love into these videos. You must be knackered half the time. It's how do you manage to make sure you're eating properly, building your brand, and juggling all your demands?
Yeah, so we don't do the in-person gym anymore. We actually moved out of there this past August, really just because the lease was up and it was expensive and took away a lot of the time that I had to do the content, which is kind of what I enjoy more. But we do most of the content in kind of batches. So in December, because Max and I actually now live about 400 miles apart from each other, about 6-7 hour drive, hour long flight. So because we don't see each other that much to do the content, when we do see each other, we have to be very productive. So I think this past December, we filmed in over a 2-week span, maybe 60 or 70 YouTube videos, something like that. And then we'll do the podcast. We've been traveling to do a lot of the podcasts now. So we'll do things like we went to New York for 3 days and did 5 podcasts there in New York with different guests and live ones with kind of little small clinic and a Q&A component to it. And in a couple of weeks, we'll go to Texas and do the same thing. We're in the Bay Area doing that. So just going all over doing that. But the biggest thing for me has just been, creating good schedules and to-do lists and a plan. If I wake up without a plan of what to do that day, or I don't create a plan when I wake up, it's kind of easy because it's kind of easy to let the day slip away from me because I don't have a boss to answer to. I don't have things that I have to do necessarily. I have stuff I have to do if I want to actually make some money, but I don't have a boss telling me, well, deadline for this is this day, and I need this article or book written by the end of the week or whatever. So yeah, it's just kind of making sure I'm self-disciplined in creating a schedule, and I got a lot of different calendars in my life, but kind of typical day, I'm usually up at 5:30, 6 o'clock. A lot of times I'll train jiu-jitsu early in the morning, like 6:30 until about 8 o'clock, and then come home, make my coffee, mix some protein in the coffee, sit in the backyard, work on my computer out there, and whether it's just answering emails or commenting on online coaching client videos and doing that stuff, and then trying to do a good job of delegating pieces as well. The kind of different smaller tasks and managing the social media and all that sort of stuff.
I mean, do you find it's difficult to keep coming up with new ideas and keep, is it the same kind of questions you're getting over and over? Do you get ever fed up of answering the same questions? Or, is the creativity always there because there's always something new? There's always something else to fix. There's always a new kind of concept or way of looking at a lift. Or do you just look at scratching your own itch and think, oh, other people might be interested in buying that, so I'll fix a training need I have and market it to other people who follow me?
Yeah, that's probably one of my greatest fears in this is running out of content. But in regards to getting the same questions, like yeah, we get the same questions a ton, and it is frustrating in some sense because we have so much information readily available. It's like if people can just take 2 minutes out of their day to use Google or just to search through our YouTube, we almost definitely have the answer they're looking for there. And I don't foresee any seismic shifts of the way that people lift weights and the way they get strong coming up. But I think I am pretty creative in the way we go about creating the content, and just it's a lot of it's more of a trying to make decisions and trying to figure out what the best kind of systematic approach to educating people is, because if you're just kind of putting videos out haphazardly, it's easy for people to see a couple here or there, and maybe they see the more advanced stuff and miss out on the more foundational stuff, or vice versa. But that's why we tend to do a lot of like series type of videos now, whether it's scientific principles of strength training video series or squat pillars, bench pillars, deadlift pillars, where they know, okay, there's 5 parts to this. Like I've only seen 3 of them, so I'm obviously missing something. So we know that each one builds on the previous one, and they all go together. So that kind of stuff is helpful to be a bit more effective education system, because trying to educate people through the internet, you don't have the luxury that there would be in like a university type setting where someone's going to take, a 101, 201, 301, 401, classes through their different years of school, where one class builds on the previous class. So we have to try and recreate that type of system the best that we can, just in a much less formal, more fun way.
So, I mean, would you have any advice to any sort of new coaches listening, or anybody that's making a transition into focusing on coaching a team or helping other people lift? How do you switch the mindset from competing to coaching?
Oh yeah, I think it is tough making the transition competitor to coach, and I think it's hard to do both well simultaneously. But I think that planning as a coach is going to be the most important thing in creating a system to what you're doing. So understanding what makes the foundation of the athlete's success of general physical preparation and technique, and then being able to build, the special physical skills on top of that, which are going to be unique to each different sport, as well as the, deeper technique and tactical and strategic aspects of success, and being able to build from the ground up there. For the people listening, there's a really great podcast, a guy on the Joe Rogan podcast named John Donaher, and he's a jiu-jitsu coach for Renzo Gracie Academy in New York, and he talks about this same concept, in which he was getting his PhD in psychology from Columbia University, a very prestigious Ivy League school, and then basically took all of he wanted to be a professor of, maybe it was philosophy, not psychology, a philosophy professor, and took all these kind of ideas about formal university education and applied them to coaching jiu-jitsu and creating this systematic approach to, what's step one of any jiu-jitsu match. So get them to the ground. Step two, get past the legs. Step three, advance to a better control position. And step four, finish. And while those 4 steps seem very simple, each one of them is going to present a lot of different problems. So whatever sport it is, people can kind of look at these steps to success and create a hierarchy in their thinking, and with that develop solutions to the different problems.
I noticed on one of your videos, there was a get to know Chad sort of video. You mentioned that you were adopted when you were younger. Did you find, have you had any kind of, not resentment, but did you find it affected you when you were younger? Have you got any advice to anybody listening who's maybe dealing with that kind of emotions? I mean, I know some people are kind of, I do get questions on that of like how people can adapt to it and get used to like new families and things like that. So have you any advice to anybody listening who's maybe struggling with that kind of?
I really don't have any effective advice there. I was adopted when I was born, so like I went home from the hospital with the family that raised me. They're my parents. Those are my brothers, and I don't actually even remember being told when I was adopted, or like when my parents told me that I was adopted. I don't. That's not a memory that I have. I just always knew that I was. Mm-hmm. So I guess they presented it to me very early and explained it, and I just was kind of like, okay, sounds fine. About 4 years ago, I met my biological mother, and I have 2 full biological brothers, and it was, a unique experience, I guess. But at the end of the day, it was more or less, I was very thankful to her that they decided to put me up for adoption, because they knew that they weren't, prepared to raise me. So I appreciate that very much. But beyond that, it was kind of just like people who looked a lot like me, but they're not my parents. My parents are the people who raised me. So I had a very smooth, I have a fantastic family and a very easy process and all of that.
Yeah. So. I mean, I think I kind of sort of blundered into the question because, you come across as somebody so warm, you're humble, that you don't have any kind of aggression, that there's no, you just seem such a lovely guy. And I see so many people justify, oh, such and such happened to me, oh, it's their fault, this happened. And they use an excuse for how they're living their life. And you seem to have been brought up so well, and that you're a fantastic role model to the youth of today. So was there anything that you think was the inspiration for this? Have you always just been on this path and had these kind of goals, or was there a point that made you focus on this kind of life?
Oh, thank you very, very much for that. I think I really just have great parents who were able to provide a very solid foundation and understanding of right and wrong, and a good moral compass and all that good stuff when I was a kid. And yeah, I mean, my dad was really just a great role model for all of that. Just an incredibly patient guy, a servant leader, and yeah, I mean, more than anything, I think that came from him. As far as like an entrepreneurial spirit and all of that, my dad was not an entrepreneur or anything, and I didn't really know anyone that was growing up, but my brother was out here visiting from New York last week, and this topic kind of came up because he was telling his wife, his wife was asking about us as when we were little kids, and both of my brothers kind of said like, yes, from the moment that you could talk, the moment that I could talk, and I was just coming up with, I was just trying to plan stuff, and whether it was putting together teams or like little like family party kind of stuff or whatever it was, I was trying to organize and create and I think that's something that my parents just fostered, and they just did a great job supporting what I wanted to do. You know, I'd have all these different just ideas and plans that I'd want to talk about, and I'd go into my dad's office in the evenings after I get home from work, and you know, I'd just tell him about whatever ideas I had that day, and I might be talking to him for hours about that, and he just listened, and so I'm very appreciative. I just have a very excellent parents.
I mean, that's something that definitely comes across, is they did a fantastic job, because you're obviously that kind of person that it's like, he would be an amazing dad, like if
thank you.
Because you have that kind of patience, but you lift heavy things and that, so I mean, is that the kind of advice that you give to anybody who's maybe a new dad? Just that kind of, how can we make sure we're raising more men like you than some of these guys who hold resentment and hurt for the rest of their time?
I'm reticent to give any parenting advice. I don't have any. I'm not a dad. I don't have any kids. I'll post the pictures. Those are all my nieces and nephews and stuff. But I think some things that are really important, obviously, are to love your kids, and that kids are going to understand a lot of that love by time, the time that you spend with them, and are able to support them. Whether it was my dad listening to my, whatever it is I wanted to talk about every day. A lot of times he was going to listen as long as I wanted to talk, or if that was that I wanted to, run down the hallway and have him throw me the football, and I would dive onto to my parents' bed and catch it and run back and do it again over and over. He supported me in that, and they were at every soccer game and swim meet and all that stuff. That's gonna be hugely important. That the time and just being there, and people are going to come from different backgrounds and have money or not have money, and maybe money makes life easier and more comfortable, but I don't think a lot of kids, a lot of times, I don't think really know the difference between that. They know if their parents are there and supporting them, and just loving them for who they are, and so that would be the extent of the parenting advice I could give.
I mean, that's something that goes back to the like the kind of questions you always get, and you have so much content about lifting, and I've often wanted to know more about you as a person, because there was just something about you that instinctively you like, and it's to figure out what was causing that. And as I found out more and more about you, the bigger fan I became, because you can go on and find thousands of your videos and stuff like that, but I was wanting to know where the inspiration for you came, and I've become a bigger and bigger fan just by listening. I can feel the love that you have for your family. So I mean, what would you? I know we've basically not covered anything that I was going to go into, but what would you want people to take from this interview? Because I mean, this has only been an hour, and it feels like 10 minutes. It's hopefully it's been enjoyment for you too. But what would you want people listening to this to take from it? Is there what kind of message should they go away with?
I mean, I would hope that for me as a person, they think that's someone who's passionate about what he does and cares about helping other people, because that's really the central, the driving force of why we create so much content, and how we go about creating it is how can we best help, powerlifters, weightlifters, coaches, personal trainers, all that, do their jobs better and reach their goals more effectively. Because even though I guess sometimes it seems kind of trivial that we're just lifting up pieces of metal attached to another piece of metal, I think it can be and it has been for me a very impactful part of my life, and been something more than just metal attached to other pieces of metal, that has allowed me to get an education and travel around the world, and meet so many great people and have these great life experiences. So then and I guess one step beyond that is, I'm sure there's people, listening to this that they don't care about powerlifting or weightlifting or whatever it is, but whatever it is that you do care about, I was 23 years old when I started Juggernaut, and straight out of college, and I think there was a lot of people that didn't think that it was a good idea, that didn't think it was a smart thing to do, and I think that there's a lot of that in the world. People who want to tell you, that you can't do it, that it's a bad idea, and that stops so many people from pursuing whatever their goal is. If it's a fear of failure kind of thing, that they won't step out and take the first step towards their goal, and that's where the biggest risk is. So I encourage people to have the courage to be great, to try and do something great with their life, whatever that is, because there's people with great ideas. There's people with these ambitions and stuff, and they never attack it with their full heart. And I think with that, you just live a life unfulfilled.
Yeah, I think that's a great message to finish with. But something I always like asking is, the second last question is, what's an unusual fact about yourself? Is there something that people are really blown away by when they hear?
An unusual fact. I don't know. I can't burp. I don't understand the concept of burping. Is that what you're kind of thing you're looking for here?
I was certainly not expecting that.
As much as I enjoy beer, it makes it really frustrating sometimes because there's just a lot of pressure built up. But beyond that, I'm a fantastic dancer. There's a couple video clips of that floating around, but not too many people get to see it. Marissa loves my singing voice. I don't know.
What kind of songs are we talking?
I got a pretty wide range. I'll go from Frank Sinatra to R. Kelly, anything in between.
Oh, nice. It's a nice range there.
Yeah.
I mean, this is why I really want to speak to you, because there was so much about you that I was just thinking, he'd be great to sit with and have a pint with, because it's not just about lifting. There's the deepness there. You can feel the passion for everything that jiu-jitsu, everything you seem to turn to, you're really into. So, I mean, for people who are interested in finding more about you, how can they keep in touch and find out more about Juggernaut? And, because there's so much more to you. And I hope I've just scratched the surface and sort of got people interested. So where can we go for more information?
Thank you. So, social media, people can follow me at Chad Wesley Smith, at Juggernaut Training on Facebook and Instagram. Juggernaut Training Systems YouTube, the Jug Life podcast, are relatively new bonus episodes to the Jug Life, Beers with Chad, which does get into a little bit more casual kind of conversation and not as much on the, trying to teach how to train and all that. They can follow along all those places. Online coaching, we do that through juggernautcoaching.com.
Good.
And then I also have several books as well, which all of those can be found at our regular website, jtsstrength.com, and store.jtsstrength.com.
Well, I thought you'd be fed up of talking about weightlifting and that all the time, so I thought I'd mix it up a wee bit. So the floor is open to you. If there's any workshops you've got coming up, anything you'd like people to do, is there any actions you would like anybody listening to go and do? Maybe sign up for a conference you're running or something of that nature?
I have a couple smaller clinics coming up, but the main one would be the Juggernaut Performance Summit is August 19th, I believe, off the top of my head, in New York. That's myself, Max, Dr. Quinn Hennock, Dr. Mike Israel, Dr. James Hoffman in New York, and we'll be covering programming, technique, nutrition, mobility, recovery, so all the big stuff. So definitely check that out. But the main thing is to subscribe to the Jug Life podcast, which they can find on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and thejuglife.com. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Check all that stuff out. And I really enjoyed this. It was a nice kind of departure from the normal questions I get asked. So thank you, Ian.
That's it for another week. Thanks for listening. Absorb it, practice it, use it. Until next time, keep trying to hit that next level in your life.